In a French language interview, Liberal leader Mark Carney was stumped when asked if he still buys US products, admitting that he doesn't know because others do his grocery shopping for him.
After being ditched by the Liberals, former Alberta NDP MLA Rod Loyola said he would run as an independent in Edmonton Southeast.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is standing by Vancouver Island Conservative candidate Aaron Gunn after the legacy media and activist groups called for his removal. Hello, Canada. It's Monday, April 7th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Isaac Lamoureux.
And I'm Noah Jarvis.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. After previously admitting that he had no idea what Canadian families pay for groceries, Liberal leader Mark Carney wasn't able to answer a question on whether he still purchases US products because as Prime Minister, somebody else does his groceries for him. The comments came during a lengthy French language interview with CBC's Radio-Canada, where the party leaders spoke in depth about their platforms. One of the panelists asked Carney whether he agreed with the response from many Canadian residents who boycotted the United States by no longer buying American products, booing the national anthem, and canceling trips down south. Carney said he agreed with the steps, but when asked whether he had boycotted U.S. goods personally, he said he had an unusual answer to give. Carney said, quote, "Being Prime Minister, I don't buy strawberries and all that anymore. Someone else does." Carney said he was still, quote, "proud of the reactions of Canadians." He previously blamed the inability of Canadians to afford groceries on a lack of, quote, "productivity." The previous comments from Carney came shortly after he was unable to say how much families of four spent on their weekly grocery bills. So, Noah, how much has the Prime Minister's residence billed taxpayers for groceries in the past? What did former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's publicly funded grocery bill look like?
So, Isaac, the Prime Minister definitely has been billing Canadians an ever-increasing amount of groceries. For example, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau previously billed Canadians over $150,000 for 2 years worth of groceries in 2022 and 2023. The average Canadian spent $29,989 on groceries. So, the Prime Minister, at least Justin Trudeau, has been spending an inordinate amount of money on groceries, far beyond what the average Canadian spends on groceries. I don't know if they're buying caviar and only the finest, most expensive organic groceries that they could possibly find, but it is definitely far more than any Canadian spends on food. Beyond just the groceries, Trudeau also spent $188,000, 864 on quote unquote food and food preparation. And that has meant that taxpayers have subsidized 157,642 of it over his entire reign as Prime Minister. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has spent over $500,000 on groceries. So it is not as if the Prime Minister doesn't get paid a good wage. The Prime Minister gets paid over $400,000 a year. So it's a little unclear for taxpayers who, see that they have to feed their family of three or family of four on a wage of, perhaps $100,000 a year. A lot of these taxpayers look at the Prime Minister and say, why can't you pay for your groceries, and why does it have to come out of the pockets of taxpayers? Taxpayers are already having a hard enough time as it is paying for groceries after years of inflation. And the carbon tax being imposed on farmers and driving up the cost of food. It is really concerning for a lot of taxpayers that the Prime Minister is disconnected from the concerns of everyday Canadians, that they don't even know how much that they're spending on groceries. They don't know where they're getting their groceries from. And I'm pretty sure Prime Minister Mark Carney has not had to pay for his groceries for many years. He was the governor of the Bank of England for several years, and he was the UN climate envoy for COP26. He's a multi-millionaire. This is not like someone who understands the plight of the average Canadian, understands the impact that inflation has on the average Canadian, understands what a bushel of strawberries costs, or how much cilantro or lettuce at the grocery store costs. But the average Canadian does understand, and I think that when Mark Carney makes comments like this, it is hurtful to his campaign. It's hurtful in his ability to relate to the average Canadian, and perhaps you might see some effect on the polls after Mark Carney's comments. It's not guaranteed, but there has been a lot of concern over whether or not this unelected prime minister ought to be the prime minister and if he really understands Canada after being overseas for many years. Former Alberta NDP MLA Rod Loyola has announced his intention to run as an independent candidate for Parliament in Edmonton Southeast against Edmonton Mayor and former Liberal Cabinet Minister Amarjeet Sohi. The decision comes after the federal Liberals dropped him from the Edmonton Gateway race due to a controversial resurfaced 2009 video. In the video, Loyola, while at an anti-NATO rally, is seen praising Hamas and Hezbollah, both of which are designated as terrorist organizations in Canada. Despite the controversy, he declared his intention to run as an independent candidate in Edmonton Southeast against former Liberal cabinet minister and Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi. Conservative candidate Jagsharen Singh Mahal is also contesting the riding. The poll aggregator 338 Canada projects the Liberals ahead of the Conservatives by 4% in Edmonton Southeast. The Liberals have not issued a public statement explaining their decision. In response, Loyola has took to social media expressing surprise at the backlash and defending his past comments and claiming he was quote unquote canceled. Loyola has also said he condemns terrorism in his statement. Loyola wrote in a statement, quote, "A video from 16 years ago surfaced in which I made comments about Hamas and Hezbollah during a hip hop segment introduction at an anti-war rally. I am announcing that this is not the end of our campaign. I will continue as an independent in the original riding I intended to run, Edmonton Southeast," unquote. If so, he wins his bid for federal office, it would also trigger a by-election for the mayoral seat, potentially making it the most expensive by-election in Edmonton's history. So his tenure as mayor has been marked by several controversies, including property tax hikes, 6.1% in 2005, and a projected 6.8% increase in 2026, along with a $100 million bike lane project that has drawn criticism. A 2023 Maru public opinion poll revealed that only 25% of Edmontonians felt Sohi deserved re-election, while 60% indicated they wanted a new mayor. So, Isaac, as an Albertan yourself, I'm pretty sure that you're at least somewhat familiar with Amarjeet Sohi's tenure as mayor. He probably has the riding locked up if the Liberals continue to rise in the poll, but the 338 Canada is showing that the riding is close. And there are several other ridings in this election that are projected to be close, especially as the Conservatives seek to flip some seats from the Liberals and NDP, as are the Liberals trying to do in their own campaign. So, are there any other ridings that Canadians should be looking at in this federal election?
Yeah, Noah, there are, especially considering Edmonton has 9 electoral districts. Some of them are very interesting. For example, Edmonton Centre currently has 10 listed candidates on Elections Canada, and this is, of course, former Liberal Party MP Randy Boissonneau's riding. So there's a lot of controversy clouding that riding as the numerous stories of controversy that came out about Boissonneau during his tenure. But in my opinion, as an Edmonton resident, there are none more interesting than the Edmonton Southeast riding, which you mentioned, because of course, Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi is running in that riding under the Liberal Party banner. And just quickly to do so, he is taking an unpaid leave of absence to run for federal politics. If he loses, he said he'll return to finish his term, but will not run for re-election. And if he wins, he, of course, will resign as mayor, and an interim mayor will be appointed. The province's municipal elections are slated for October. And just to remind listeners quickly about Rod Loyola, this is a former Alberta NDP MLA who resigned from that party to run with the Liberals, despite True North revealing that he bashed the Liberals and said he would never run with them a decade prior. And when he was a Liberal candidate, he was actually set to run in Edmonton Gateway. However, as you said, now he plans to run as an independent in Edmonton Southeast against Sohi. As for Sohi, a 2023 Maru public opinion showed that only 25% of Edmontonians felt he deserved re-election, while 60% said they wanted a new mayor. And despite his poor approval ratings, he seemingly thinks he can win federally. So he also has other controversies. For example, he was previously photographed with Jaspal Atwal, a convicted attempted assassin, during a trip to India with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The battlegrounds in Edmonton are set to be exciting in the federal election that will take place on April 28th. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre stood firmly by Conservative North Island Powell River candidate Aaron Gunn, pushing back hard against what he called a false and misleading smear campaign against the BC documentary filmmaker. During a press conference on Saturday, Poilievre was pressed on a letter put out by former members of the Union of British Columbian Indian Chiefs and local politicians alleging that Gunn had denied the generational trauma caused by residential schools. Poilievre rejected the accusation outright when asked if he stood by his candidate. He responded, quote, "Yes, I do. The letter is false. He has not denied the impacts of residential schools. That's simply misinformation." Poilievre pointed to Gunn's public record, where the popular filmmaker and commentator explicitly condemned the, quote, "truly horrific events that occurred in residential schools." Gunn himself has stated that, quote, "any attempt to suggest otherwise is simply false," adding that he supports reconciliation rooted in opportunity and prosperity for Indigenous Canadians. Beyond addressing the controversy, Poilievre doubled down on the party's broader message, highlighting Gunn's commitment to unlocking natural resource development in partnership with First Nations communities. Poilievre said Gunn supports a First Nations resource charge that would allow companies to pay taxes directly to Indigenous governments, putting prosperity directly into the hands of local communities. Poilievre said, quote, "The choice in this election is clear. After a lost Liberal decade marked by rising costs, increased crime, and a weakening economy, do we want to keep a government that holds our First Nations people back?" In particular, activists and former Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs accused Gunn of denying residential schools' impacts, a charge Gunn has called since, quote, "simply false." Legacy media reports have honed in on a post responding to the claims of residential schools being analogous to genocide. The post said, quote, "There was no genocide. Stop lying to people and read a book. The Holocaust was a genocide. Get off Twitter and learn more about the world." In 2021, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau publicly acknowledged in inquiry's findings that Canada had committed a genocide against Indigenous peoples. The declaration has been disputed by historians, including Trent University professor of Canadian history Christopher Dummett and others. So, Noah, have others come out in defense of Aaron Gunn since the media smears began?
Yes, Isaac, it seems as if Aaron Gunn is receiving quite a bit of support after some of the attacks he has sustained in the past couple weeks. One of the people that have come out into his defense is Conservative Party of British Columbia leader John Rustad. He came out with a strong statement on X saying that he defends Aaron Gunn. He said that while he was the co-chair of Ellis Ross's leadership campaign, he said that Aaron had also tried to run in the leadership race and that he had wanted him to run in the campaign, despite the fact that the party itself had disqualified him. He said that Aaron is, quote, "an outstanding young man." And he said that the media smears against him were just inappropriate. Also, a letter was signed by several local politicians, the mayor of Campbell River, Kermit Dahl, and several councillors. They all signed the letter saying that Aaron Gunn is a tireless advocate for the people of his riding. And of Powell River, and that they would like to see him run in the federal election, and that he does not deserve to be turfed. This is someone who has made several documentaries about the state of Vancouver and the state of Canada, talking about the various problems that Vancouver is dealing with, such as housing, crime, especially the opioid crisis. And these documentaries had gained a lot of traction and had become quite popular, exemplifying what exactly is wrong with Vancouver and Canada more broadly. I think that a lot of the candidates who have been turfed by the Conservative Party definitely weren't nearly as popular or didn't nearly have as much institutional support as Aaron Gunn.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.